Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Adair. I'm a program coordinator with Saskatoon Industry-Education Council, and thank you so much for showing an interest in this SAS Money event today. We are going to be having a conversation with Jeffrey Hodgson, who is the Managing Director for Global Stakeholder Affairs with CPP Investments. Some of you may have heard of the Canada Pension Plan before. I'm sure many of you have. And you're going to get a little background information on that today and learn about Jeffrey's career journey as well. I am coming to you today from Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. And wherever you may be joining us from today, thank you so much for joining us. A little bit of background information before we get going, folks. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the Saskatoon Industry-Education Council for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We are a nonprofit organization up in Saskatoon on Treaty 6 territory, as I mentioned, who provide career development and programming opportunities for youth educators and career practitioners through our customized programming. We host around 40 programs a year, a lot of in-person events and online resources that you can take advantage of. Some of you may be familiar with our summer youth internship or skills bootcamp programs for students in and around Saskatoon. You may be familiar with our Connected event. It's a mentorship event for young women in the community. Relevance magazine, a fantastic career development magazine that you can check out, and you can actually find that on contact360.ca, and I definitely recommend that site for any of you who may be thinking about applying for your next job. Check out our employability program on that page. For those of you who are thinking about looking for a job or just thinking about doing some research and career, good on you, good choice to do that. We always focus our Spotlight on Careers programming on a different sector every month during the school year. And you'll see on your screen right now the sectors that we are going to be focusing on. So go to Spotlight on Careers page on saskatooniec.ca, and you can access resources, interviews with people in various professions. You can access some post-secondary information, and you can even see if you can maybe take part in some live events. So definitely check that page out. Now, it happens to be the SAS Money program that has brought us together today, and I hope that all of you have checked out saskmoney.ca. If you haven't, saskmoney.ca is definitely a wealth of resources where you can access some projects that you could take part in. For example, the Money Fair, that is an excellent project for students across Saskatchewan. You can access different financial literacy programs if you're doing some learning on your own. And you can also access videos just like this one. And maybe this is where you found this event. You can access career talks or SAS Money Minute tips from professionals across Saskatchewan, as well as accessing some of the past events that we have shared before. And as always, if you're done this event, when you finish this event, if you get a chance to give us some feedback, we would really appreciate it. So definitely pause it right here. And if you could give us some feedback, that would be much appreciated. And lastly, I need to mention as well that if you are on social media, you could follow us on any of the platforms that you see on your screen. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and definitely a reminder to check out the two websites there, saskmoney.ca and saskatooniec.ca. So folks, I am here with Jeff Hodgson now. We are going to be having a chat about CPP Investments and his career journey and some advice that he has for students across Saskatchewan. So Jeff, we're so glad that you could join us today. How are you doing today, by the way?
Fantastic. Very good. I'm based here in Toronto, where our organization is based. I should mention, and for folks listening in Saskatchewan, a bit of background. Part of the reason I want to reach out and do this is I'm actually originally from Saskatchewan myself. I grew up on a farm just east of St. Louis, Saskatchewan, near Prince Albert. And so I was invited by Sask Money to come in and talk a little bit about what I do now, my career journey, and the hopes it might be useful to you. So very excited to be able to do that today.
Awesome. I imagine a lot of people are going to be watching this know where St. Louis is for sure, not too far from us too. So that's perfect. So Jeff, I would just like you to maybe tell the students right now just about your describing your role at CPP Investments. What does your role entail?
Okay. Well, I work in public affairs and communications, which means I manage our relationships and communicate with organizations that want to have any sort of dealings with our organization. So that can be everyone from a business group to an education organization to, sort of average Canadians sort of reaching out who'd like to know a little bit about what we do and why we do it. My background actually is originally in journalism, so communications is the focus. I worked as a journalist for many years, and yeah, a role I've done here for more than 5 years, and a very enjoyable one.
That is excellent. So I think I do want to ask you a little bit more about your career journey and getting from St. Louis to the role that you're in now.
Mhm.
But before that, I think that a lot of folks are going to be curious about CPP Investments itself. And I know that you've prepared some slides today. So I'd just like you to give us an overview of what CPP Investments is all about.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I will be sharing my slides here and give a bit of a background. So I hope everyone will bear with me and I will get this right. So you should be able to see these now. It should be up on the screen. But CPP Investments, most people probably majority of Canadians haven't heard from us. I'm almost certain the majority of high school students. Some of you might have heard of the Canada Pension Plan. And that can be for a variety of ways. One might be that you might have grandparents who receive CPP payments to support them in retirement. Otherwise, other people might, if you have summer jobs and that sort of thing, you might see a CPP come off your paycheck and think, where is that? What happens there? I'm going to talk to you a little bit. We're the organization that effectively manages the money for the Canada Pension Plan. So when that money comes off the paycheck, what it does is some of it goes to, from the worker to the beneficiary, like perhaps your grandparent, but some of us comes to us to invest, and we invest it to ensure that basically there's enough money for people when they retire. So just to talk a little bit about this. So again, our purpose, more than 21 million Canadians either contribute to the Canada Pension Plan or they receive benefits. So we're operating on behalf of them. And we currently manage more than $500 billion. So, and that's a billion with a B. So I'll go into that in a little bit. Give you a sense of things though, and this is far removed for a lot of people. Your high school students, your retirement sure is the very last thing you're thinking about. But fingers crossed, it's coming one day, decades hence. And the planning that you do and the smart choices you make now, small choices you make now can have really powerful positive impacts down the road. But we were set up because, most places, people will retire, the majority of what they have comes from their workplace savings, maybe a pension plan at work or a group saving vehicle, or their own private savings and things like RRSPs, tax-free savings accounts. There's also systems. One is taxpayer supported, where if you work in Canada and you live and contribute a number of years, you get something called old age security, which goes back many, many decades. It sort of came out of the Depression many years ago when governments realized a lot of seniors were living in poverty. So that's part of it. And then there's Canada Pension Plan, which is the piece that I talk about. It's slightly different because old age pension comes from tax dollars, but CPP is the money that comes off of workers' paychecks. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then who we are. So Canada Pension Plan created in the 1960s. And at that point, they still found lots of seniors were living in poverty. They get to the end of their lives. They just hadn't been able to save enough money, didn't have enough money. So the governments, the provinces, nine Canadian provinces and the federal government came together to create the Canada Pension Plan. And at that point, it was what was called a pay-go system. So you just had 6.5 workers. They contributed in, they give it to the one retiree, and that was it. But as time passed, what happened is demographics changed. People started having smaller families, and demographics really impact things. So the mid-1990s, those governments, the 9 provinces and the federal government, were told by someone called the chief actuary that the plan wasn't going to be sustainable. There wasn't going to be enough money because by 2015, there'd be so many retirees and so few workers that there wouldn't be enough money. So governments had to take action, and they did. And part of it was creating us. They created the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board to take the money that they did have, and instead of investing it in lower yielding sort of investments, they decided to put it more into global financial markets in order to get better returns. So you can see here, this chart, contributors and beneficiaries, they pay into the plan. What's not needed comes to us, and we put it into global markets to earn a return. Now, if we look at, since we were set up more than 20 years ago, we're based out of Toronto, but we have offices around the world because, again, we have $529 trillion or billion dollars to invest. That's more than half a trillion dollars. So we invest that globally, both in Canada and internationally on behalf of 21 million Canadians. And just to give you a sense of things, again, the size of the fund, most recently, it's grown to 529 billion. We've earned a return over the last 10 years, after costs, at 10.1%. And I'm sure you've studied math class and people have talked to you about the power of compound interest. But again, when you are earning a higher percentage each year on your money, that can really add up, because the money you make one year also gets invested, and then that additional money gets invested. So that's how we've been able to grow over time. And as a result of our work, independent reviews of the Canada Pension Plan, where they were worried of running out of money, it now says that the Canada Pension Plan looks good to be financially stable for the next 75 years, which is key. And looking at this chart here, you can see that the idea is that the fund current projections are that it will grow to $3 trillion. So again, a lot of people worry, oh, will the Canada Pension Plan be there for me when I'm retirement? I'm a young person today. But through the work that we do, and part of the what I really enjoy about my role is that it's supporting an organization that is helping to provide that security in retirement. And with that, that's a little bit about who I am, and the organization that I work for.
That is so interesting, Jeff. Thanks so much. I think students are probably going to be like me, just looking at that amount of money and hearing about, over $500 billion, and then even looking at over 10% return is just is a really impressive number too. So, and just also the thought of this group really protecting that money that is being that might be coming off those paychecks that students may not have thought of before, right? I think that's just a fantastic news to see that this is such a healthy fund. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
It used to be a bad news story when the fund was running low, but it's now fortunately a good news story. And I think that's a really encouraging thing, that we can make choices, make changes that where situations may not be so good, can actually sort of change the direction very, very, very positively.
That's so interesting to hear. I think the students as well might want to know a little bit more about how you got into the role that you're in. I think some students may be thinking of a career in the financial sector at some point. So could you tell us a little bit more about your career journey, Jeff?
Okay, very quickly, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. So grew up on a farm, and initially was thinking that I would probably go study accounting. I always had a strong interest in finance. I, thought that, farming, growing up on a farm, things can be uneven, depends on whether it rains or not. I kind of liked that stability that was offered by the financial sector. I found it really interesting, how do businesses operate, that sort of thing. What happened along the way, though, is I sort of got, my curiosity got, the other thing that I was very interested in is news and current events. What goes on in the world? Why are things happening? At that time, there was a lot of when I was young, very momentous political change. It was just quite a few years ago, with the fall of the end of the Cold War, fall of the Iron Curtain, all of that those sort of things really got me curious. And we see this today, where there's major dramatic events happening in the world. That led me to journalism. So in my applications for things, I ended up applying, in addition to the financial programs, for a journalism program in Ottawa at Carleton University, which has a journalism program there. And I ended up getting in. And then when I had to make the decision, do I go to this University of Saskatchewan or University of Regina to study finance, or do I go to study journalism? I ended up partly because I just some good counsel from people around me, my parents, who said, you're really, really interested in it, and when you're curious in something and you like it, you're probably going to do well at it. So if you like this a lot, why not take that risk? So I did that. And then that sort of set me off on a 25-year career. I completed my degree there. I worked summers. I got my first journalism job at the Prince Albert Daily Herald. And right away, coming out of journalism school, I was out there reporting, writing about stories, interviewing people, which was fascinating. And then after I graduated, I got hired by an organization called Bloomberg. Some people may have heard of Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York. He ran for president at one point and operates an organization called Bloomberg Business News. I was one of his first employees in Canada because his organization had employed journalists to write about finance. So I discovered that even though I'd chosen journalism instead of finance, in the end, my career allowed me to overlap. The fact that I had interest in both actually made me ultimately much more employable, and it was great. And from there, I worked for Bloomberg and then another organization called Reuters. Reuters allowed me. I started with them in Toronto, but they had organized offices all over the world. So over my more than 20-year career with them, I spent 3 of those years living in London, England, in the UK, covering financial news there, and then also in Hong Kong. I lived for 3 years. So what I found was, again, pursuing a career where, it overlapped with mutual interests, and getting that education, just opened up the world for me. I'd always wanted to sort of travel overseas, and here I had an opportunity to get, my company moved me over both times to sort of do this work. And again, everywhere I went, the experience I had in a different location helped to inform things. So that was my career journey. And I finished my journalism career at Canadian Press, where I was the national business editor here in Toronto. But what had happened was, in the process of sort of doing some looking around, this is the way it works. If you're ever looking for a job, have a lot of coffees with people, have a network, talk to people, talk about opportunities. Someone heard an opportunity came up with Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, or CPP Investments, and a mutual friend introduced me to my now boss. We met, we hit it off. I decided to make a change, and that was more than 5 years ago. And I'm very glad that I did. It was a new challenge. It was something outside of my sort of first career of journalism. But again, one of the piece of advice I give is, in terms of lifelong learning, make sure to always be open to things, always take on new challenges, always be curious, and pursue things that way.
That's excellent to hear. Thanks for sharing all that, Jeff. I'm always interested to hear, and I think students will be too, just about how people don't necessarily follow a linear path in their career, right? These different opportunities pop up that people take advantage of, and you're another example of that, and that's fantastic. And at the SIEC, we work on career development all the time, so we love hearing these stories. And I would love if you could share any more career advice that you might have for the young people who may be watching this.
Okay. Well, if the phrase that sort of has always stuck in my head since I was a kid was, someone said, work hard and work smart. And actually better to sort of work smart than work hard. That doesn't, hard work is always important, always pays off. And one of the lessons I think my advantages was growing up on a farm where there was always lots of work to do, and you learn how to focus, you learn how to set goals, you learn how to get things done, take ownership and take responsibility. And those simple lessons actually are incredibly valuable, and they carry you through life. But that's the work hard part. But the work smart part is always, it was instilled in me, and I've seen it, the person who can, you can work hard loading a truck with whatever, manually, you can be the best worker, you can take 8 hours. But the person who can run the forklift is always going to be more productive and effective worker than you. And so you'll want to always sort of think about, what can I do to ensure that as I work, that I kind of have this leverage, I have this greater capacity. So within my family, I was among my siblings were within the first generation to sort of go to get university education. But even within my family, there was always, people they would be electricians, they would be carpenters, they would go out there and they get specialized skills, so that when they showed up, for example, on a construction site, the person who doesn't have skills, can do general labor, is not going to be as valued as the person who can do the electrical, the plumbing, the fine carpentry, all of these things. And this applies to all sorts of aspects. So I'd say that's one big piece. Figure out, and it will also tie to this though, is that curiosity piece and interest. What really interests you? What excites you when you do something? Again, what do you enjoy doing a lot? Do you like working with people? Do you prefer not working with people? Do you prefer working with books? Do you like doing manual sort of labor, being out there and on site? Do you prefer sort of more of an office sort of environment? Figure out what your likes and interests are, and then work to build on that and build those skills on top of it. And it just, once you figure it out, sort of generally where you want to work, getting that skills, that education, that training, that just makes you so valuable. And, I'd say as part of that, always continue to be curious, because it never stops. You can be working for many decades and still a new opportunity comes up, and it means you have to learn. And if you have that ability to sort of be curious, always want to learn more, understand better, bring yourself up, you're going to be of tremendous value to, whoever your employer is, or maybe you want to be an independent business person. Maybe you want to farm, maybe you want to, take these things on. But you're always going to want to get that additional knowledge, skills, training. So that would be my sort of twin things to, work smart/hard, and then also figure out what you like and really work and pursue that, and figure out where you can overlap. And the rewards of that, employers, organizations, if you're going to go work for somebody, are always looking for good people, hardworking people, and skilled people who are willing to sort of add value through their training and knowledge.
Excellent themes there. Just that skill building and curiosity that goes along with the networking that you were even talking about in your previous
Mhm,
answer too. So really good. And I think for students watching it too, not only does this learning occur in high school, and I hope that we're doing some research in high school, but
mhm,
it also continues, of course, through post-secondary and now beyond. So many great opportunities for people to build their skills out there and be lifelong learners, right? Which is such a
mhm,
valuable skill too. Yeah.
mhm,
And Jeff, just finally, one more question for you. Since it is the SAS Money program from the SIEC that
mhm.
brought us together, whenever we talk to folks who are working in the financial sector, we usually ask for some advice, just maybe some tips or some lessons learned that you would pass on to young people about personal finance. And just wondering if you might be able to share something with the students here.
Okay, excellent. Happy to do that. I should note this is not on behalf of my organization, which manages money. It doesn't give personal financial advice, but I'm very happy to share because it's just in terms of my own financial well-being. Some of those early lessons that I learned were just incredibly valuable. And perhaps the most, a number of them here, but lumped in. Number one, just sort of managing your money, understanding how to, the money you make, what you do with it. And it sounds kind of simple, but it becomes quite a challenge. And the importance of saving is saving and investing is absolutely critical. Now, the easiest thing in the world is to spend money. We all have stuff that we want. Money comes in. We can always think of things that we want to do with it. One of the most important rules I ever learned comes from a book called The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton. It's a simple rule. It's a lesson called pay yourself first. And I learned this at an early age. And what the message is that to prioritize savings. So what most people do, unfortunately, is they make money and they have a budget, and the money comes in and they end up, there are surprises. Something can happen. Your axle, something can break in the vehicle that you're driving. You can be caught up. You can be pulled into need to help with something, or maybe less money comes in than expected. What most people do is they put savings at the end of the queue. So they try and match, and they're like, if I have money left at the end of the month, I'll save it. Guess what? They get to the end of the month and there's no money because things have come up. Pay yourself first is a simple rule. When you get paid, take the percentage that you want to save and save it. Put it to the front of the line, make that the priority, and then work with the remaining money that you have. And this is, again, I had to apply this at a time in my life when I was very young. I had a much lower income, students living on, student loans and that sort of thing. And at that point, you might not want to be saving if you're borrowing to invest for your education, which I think is very critical and important. But even, just coming out of university, having student loan payments, all of those things, you're in working at the sort of a more junior level job, you might not have a lot of money, but if you can teach yourself, there's also a time value to money. If you can teach yourself to start saving then and investing accordingly, that's the toughest part. How to invest, there's lots of people out there who can teach you about how to do that, but learn to have discipline over your finances and pay yourself first. And over time, again, that power of compound interest is so tremendous. There are all these studies that say someone who manages to save sort of a bit in their 20s and then, has the compound interest, in your 40s, you have to save so much more to just catch up with that young person in their 20s who wisely saved a bit of money. So that would be sort of one of the key lessons that I would put out there. Pay yourself first as a little rule of thumb, and then learn how to budget and manage your spending. Ultimately, is the discipline that'll help you get to where you need to go.
That's excellent advice. Thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah, I that lesson about compound interest is something I wish I would have known more in high school. So I'm really glad that you passed that on. That's great. And The Wealthy Barber is a book that's really stood the test of time, hasn't it?
Yeah, because it's based on sort of principles of like these good solid advice. So I would do that. And compound interest, I think Albert Einstein is attributed with saying, maybe correctly or not, that I think it's like the eighth wonder of the world, the impact it can have. It also works the other way. If you ever build up too much of the wrong kind of debt, not maybe mortgage that supports your home or student loans, those can be very responsible and positive types of debt. But say consumer debt on a credit card, that compound interest works the other way. That's money you're going to have to, your future self is going to have to deal with. So I'd also say, remember to be good to your future self and make smart choices around that.
That's excellent advice. Yeah, I think that's a great place to end our conversation too. So, Jeff, thanks so much for having this conversation with us today. It's great to connect with someone from Saskatchewan who's had such a varied and interesting career journey, and to hear about how the work that you do and that CPP Investments just impacts millions of Canadians and is such a global group as well. So, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you so much. Along the way, I had advice from a lot of great people growing up in Saskatchewan who helped to sort of set me on the path where things that, I've been able to make the right choices through them. So hopefully to pay that forward. And I'm sure the people watching this will one day make those choices and be able to pay it forward to the next generation to everyone's benefit. So.